Hey, you guys. So I have moved into the bedroom. This is the only room that is more of a gray room than blue, and it has a white background on this closet. So hopefully this will be slightly better. But it feels like it's taking on a slightly pink hue. I've got my monitor over here. So we're just going to roll with it. It'll be something different next week, but I hope you guys do enjoy the readings regardless of how the background looks. So on Monday's episode, you guys heard some shocking news that once Harper and Jackson got into Winter Haven, they didn't sense anyone there, except that Harper could feel that her sister Angela was there somewhere. So she follows basically her energy down into the very bottom basement of Winter Haven. If I said Shadowford, I apologize. Into Winter Haven, which is Priestess Winter's home. And she finds Angela up in an iron cage hanging with 19 other iron cages that are almost completely filled with women, although there's a couple of men. And also, that Lydia Ashworth is there and potentially has been there since the night of the party that Harper, that whole thing that went down with Harper from before, or not the party, I guess, but from the moment that Harper was taken through, that they were trying to kill her. That's when Harper told the truth about what had happened with her mom, and Lydia Ashworth was carried away. So she's been there for some months. So we're about to find out a little bit more about what happened to Lydia Ashworth, and we're going to find out whether or not Harper is going to be able to save her sister. But I have been enjoying the preview style because for me, I'm obviously same clothes. I'm recording this right after I recorded the previous one, and then kind of waiting for it to upload before I go and record the next one. And that allows me to get a full week done so that now I can go and focus on homeschool stuff with Andrew, and I can focus on getting some other things going for courses that I have running, as well as I'm speaking at this conference starting later this week. So there's a lot going on this week. So this has been really helpful. So I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it. I've been really spending some time trying to think about the experience that we have here as a community, because I really enjoy it. I really like it, but I also feel like there might be ways to improve it in the future. Like, for example, also recording the audio so that it can be a podcast just as much as it could be a YouTube. So we could do simultaneously posting it to Google Play Podcasts as well as to YouTube. And then also potentially, I would love, so this is just something that's been on my mind. And I think that as we're traveling, some of the creative juices and ideas are starting to flow about the future. So this is nowhere near set in stone, but it's something that I had wanted to do a long time ago. So I would love your feedback on whether you think this would be kind of cool. So when I did backtracking, when I did The Witch's Key, I read the new chapter live, but I also posted it to my blog and to Wattpad for people that were listening, but also wanted to read it simultaneously or wanted to read it afterwards so that you could read it yourself instead of just listening, or for people that didn't have time to listen, because it can take longer to listen to something than it does to just read it outright. So I was doing that, but something I have always wanted to do, and I actually bought a web domain called canonworlds.com years ago, because I was thinking about creating a website where you could get the story serialized the way that we're doing it now, like chapter by chapter, or episode by episode, and you could hear it, listen to it, watch it, or you could read it. And then in addition to that, having some extra things, like because you can't really do this on YouTube, but I could do it on a website where it's like when you're reading through or listening to the episode, you also get some imagery, like pictures of how I think this character looks, or for example, the iron cages. Like if I have thought about hiring a couple of artists who could, every time I finish a chapter, just sketch out something that was kind of cool from this chapter, like either two characters together, or if it's the iron cage, or if it's the butterfly pendant, just having that extra visual thing, and maybe even running some fan art competitions for those of you that might be artistically inclined, that might want to submit some things, and I could post them on the website. And this has been I'm not talking about, I've just been thinking about this since we started The Witch's Key. This is something that has been on my mind as something I wanted to try and do for more than 5 years now. So 2016, 2015 is when I really started first thinking about it. Probably when I first started writing Sacrifice Meat as a cereal was the first time it sort of came into my mind. And then later as something like, oh, this would be kind of a cool way to do it. The issue with it somewhat has been like, okay, so if you do that, how do you make money off of it? Because I don't really make much money off of YouTube, even though you guys do see ads come on from time to time. It'll be like $58 a month. It's not like a full-time living coming off of AdSense on YouTube. And then, if you get the book for free, will you also purchase it? But it also seemed like, when it came to The Witch's Key, so many of you did support me in that way. Like, even though you had listened to the book for free, you still bought the paperback signed, or you still bought the ebook for $4, or you still bought like a Sir Bean t-shirt or a mug or something like that. So I feel like it would be kind of cool to, not with this series, like I'm not going to do this with book 12 or anything like that, but maybe with a future series or continuing on with The Witch's Key, to do it in that manner where we do the previews like this, where we still get the live stream, but when the preview goes up, like on a Monday, simultaneously the chapter goes up on my website with some bonus content or material, like a little side story about a character, a picture of what I think this character looks like, or different things like that. So let me know if you think that would be interesting, or if you like things the way they are, or if you're kind of getting tired of the lives and you'd rather just read the books when they come out. Totally be honest about it. I would love to hear your opinions, because I'm really reevaluating and thinking, and a lot of my planning for Q4 coming up, like what I'm going to do in Q4 of this year, the last 3 months, is going to be planning what I want to do for next year, because I'm going to be finishing out the Shadow Demon Saga. It will be done. And then I only have one book left in the Eternal Sorrow series that should finish sometime early next year. And then I'm going to be back to The Witch's Key full time, and that will be like my only main series. So there's a lot to think about. I would love to hear your feedback. Let me know. But we need to move on, because I am so excited for you to hear this next part. So this is episode 12 of Demons Forever, moving on right after Harper, as she's sitting up there in the cage with her sister Angela, right after she hears Lydia Ashworth's voice, who told her basically, I knew you would come for her. Harper, the hero, risking everything for the people she loves. Okay, so chapter 50, All Magic Has a Cost. You probably thought I'd be dead by now, Lydia Ashworth said. Your own actions got you here, I said, leaning back against the bars. Am I supposed to feel guilty about that? She laughed, then leaned forward as wet coughs racked her body. I grimaced. That didn't sound good. Had she been here since the day the Order tried to kill me? That was months ago. I know this might come as a surprise to you, but I don't blame you for what you did, she said once her coughing had stopped. I was headed to this place from the time I was 15 years old. I tried to play their game, but I guess I always knew this is where it would all end. I bit my bottom lip. Was she trying to gain my sympathy? She was the one who had made a pact with the Crow Witches. She was the one who had betrayed my mother and had her killed. She'd been playing with fire since before she was my age. I was glad she'd finally gotten burned. An awkward silence filled the room. The only sound was my heart beating wildly in my ears and the drip, drip, drip of blood on the floor below. I knew you'd come for her, Lydia said again. She adjusted her position and leaned back against the far side of her jail. She lifted one knee and rested her elbow against it. She gave me a sad smile and shook her head. I was the one who picked Angela to be the tier team trainer. If you can believe that. How stupid, right? I trusted her. She was such a rising star in the Order. Turns out she was a traitor this whole time. I had no idea she was half demon, much less that she was our prima futura's sister. My eyes widened, and I leaned forward. You knew? About our father? About me? Yes, she said. Well, not until recently. I could tell there was something special about you. You caught on to magic so fast. Still, that could have just been talent or dumb luck. But after you escaped to the shadow world and had been gone a while, I knew there was more to it. I've seen what Priestess Winter does to gates who defy her. I expected her to kill us all and move on. When she didn't, I figured it had to do with you somehow. You were still valuable to her in some way. I shook my head. That still doesn't tell me how you know about my father. One of the Winter sisters told me, she said. Anora, I think. She comes in here sometimes to bring a new prisoner or take someone away for questioning. I asked her why her mother hadn't destroyed the Peachville Gate, and she told me, you were a demon princess. I honestly thought she was kidding. I looked around. Why are you the only one awake in here? I'm not a threat to them, she said, hanging her head. They've already stripped my magic away. I'm a hollow shell at this point until they decide to make it official. Make what official? I asked. She lifted her head and stared straight into my eyes. You don't know? She asked. They're going to turn me into a hunter. A cold shiver ran up my arms and I pulled them closer to my chest. You probably think I deserve all this, and maybe I do, she said. But if I do, so does Priestess Winter herself. What do you mean? Don't you understand? The ceremony to transfer the Prima line is dark magic, she said. It's everything the Order says they stand against, yet it's exactly what they tried to do to you. Priestess Winter acts like she's such a saint. She pretends to follow the law of the Order, but she openly defied her own rules just to transfer the line to a new family. I mean, think about it, Harper. She arrested me and threw me in this place for basically trying to perform the same dark magic she was casting. For me, it's illegal and blasphemous, but for her, it's fine. I sat back. I hadn't considered that before now. You were worth the blasphemy for her, though, Lydia said. Of course, after you were gone, she probably would have just altered everyone's memories to forget you ever existed. Then she could have gone back to her perfect fake life without a mark on her pristine record. People are much more likely to join an organization that seems pure and good, the one that openly practices evil and kills its own members on a whim. You said you know what she does to a town that defies her, I said. That's dark magic, too. Lydia sighed. I know what she does to those towns. That doesn't mean the rest of the Order's witches know that. They see Priestess Winter as this blameless example of perfection. They practically worship her, never realizing she would kill them in an instant if it served her purpose. Bitterness dripped from her words. Are you really so different? I asked, my heart aching for my mother. Lydia Ashworth laughed and raised her eyebrows. No, I guess not, she said. I've lived my life stepping over people to get what I want, killing them if I had to. Hell, even being in this cage didn't stop me. Why do you think your sister's here in the first place? I looked down at my sister. She was still dreaming, her expression locked in fear. I swallowed. What are you talking about? The Halloween ball, she said. When you accidentally unlocked my memories of your mother, I remembered who she'd been having an affair with. We were, after all, best friends. She'd told me everything. And since I knew who her lover was, or at least who he was pretending to be, I knew he had another daughter with his human wife. That made you sisters, and it made Angela King, half demon. And you thought knowing that could somehow save you? When they took me away that day, she said, they brought me here to rot. Of course, I had no idea if the ceremony had failed. Shocking, really, when you think about it. A young girl like you surviving despite all the odds. Then apparently you kept surviving, even against the hunters. Priestess Winter came tearing in here about a week ago, so angry that she couldn't find a way to capture you, yelling something about you killing her favorite cat. That's when I realized she had no idea about the valuable bait she had right there in Peachville. My heart stopped. You told her about my sister to try to save yourself? Yes, I told her, she said. She gestured at her cell. She promised she'd let me go. I shouldn't have been surprised she was lying. Rage boiled up inside of me. First, you kill my mother, I said through clenched teeth, and then you have my sister imprisoned. Don't take it personally, she said. I've been in too deep since I was a young girl. It's been nothing but bargaining and struggling to stay alive and to stay on top ever since. All I ever wanted was to be prima. Is that really so much to ask? It was your choice to get mixed up with the crows, I said. My fists were clenched so tight I'd lost all feeling in them. Whatever fate they've got in store for you, I'm sure you deserve much worse. Is there a fate worse than becoming a hunter? She looked at me, the fear in her eyes raw and real. If I didn't hate her so much, I might have pitied her. Do you expect me to feel sorry for you? My fingernails dug into my palms. You deserve everything that's coming to you. It's really Drake and Lori I feel bad for. You might not have been the best mother in the world, but at least they had a mother. A hysterical laugh escaped from her then. She banged the back of her head against the iron bars. You're just too sweet for your own good, my dear, she said, always thinking of other people even when you're in danger. Well, I have news for you. Drake lost his real mother a long time ago. My blood ran cold. What do you mean, his real mother? Use your head, Harper. Do the math. Your mom and I were in the same class in school, right? So how did I have two children who are both older than you? I would have had to have them when I was, 13 or younger? I lifted my hand to my forehead. She was right. How did I not realize this earlier? How come no one had ever mentioned that she wasn't Drake's real mom? I had no idea, I said. No one does, she said. That's the kicker. Not even Drake realizes it. He and Lori are my sister's kids, but now no one remembers I ever even had a sister. Memory-altering spells can be very powerful, especially when they're mixed with the darker magics. Darker magic? I asked the question, but was I really prepared for the answer? She'd already told me so much. I wasn't sure how much more I could handle. I wrapped my arms around my sister's trembling body. Priestess Winter may have acted like she was surprised by your announcement that I was working hand in hand with the crows, but that was all an act, she said. She's known about that since the day your mother died. When it didn't work, I was terrified someone would come after me, but no one came. I actually thought I got away with it for a while. I was terrified when Priestess Winter came to me a few years later, well after my initiation ceremony, and told me she knew what I had done, only she hadn't come to hurt me. She'd come to ask me for a favor. What kind of favor? She wanted the crow's spell books, she said. She wanted access to its dark magic. It was magic that had been lost to the Order for some time. Priestess Winter was eager to get it back. A shiver ran down my spine. So you stole the book from the crows. Priestess Winter made a copy, and I returned it before anyone had even noticed it was gone. I knew the question I had to ask now, but the answer scared me. What did you get in exchange? She smiled and ran a hand over her shaved head. 2 things. I wanted to be acting prima in your absence, she said. And second, I wanted my sister's life. I shivered, a cold chill deep in my bones. Mariah, she was everything I wasn't. Beautiful, smart, everyone loved her. Lydia beat her palm against her head with force. She was nearly 10 years older than I, and I was so incredibly jealous of her. Our parents were always asking me, why couldn't I be more like Mariah? So when I got the chance to have anything I wanted, I chose to have her life. I just didn't realize Priestess Winter would take it so literally. I swallowed thick disgust. What did she do? She cradled an imaginary child in her arms, and a river of tears flowed down her cheeks. I remember when Drake was just a tiny newborn. I was still in high school back then, and my sister lived in this beautiful house with her perfect husband and her perfect kids. I remember visiting them when Mariah brought Drake back from the hospital. He was so little and so fragile. I loved him instantly. But Mariah, she took it all for granted. She complained that he cried too much and she wasn't getting enough sleep. She adored Lori, but said she'd never wanted a boy. What good was a boy to the order? She didn't understand what a gift she'd been given. She didn't understand how beautiful her life really was. I never would have taken it for granted the way she did. You stole her life? I said, my voice shaky. Lydia sniffed and ran her hand under her nose. I didn't mean to. I know you won't believe me, but it's true, she said. I just meant that I wanted a life like hers, but Priestess Winter told me that the only way to cast such a powerful and permanent spell was to sacrifice something valuable. I didn't realize she meant my sister until it was too late. Horror filled my veins, and I looked away from her. Oh God, she'd killed her own sister. The room began to spin. I wanted to throw up. The funny thing is that after everything I did for the Order and for the Winter family, this is still where I ended up, she said. I guess in the end, she realized I knew too much. At least she didn't put me into a nightmare sleep like the others. The only way to break it is to drink a potion, one no one knows the recipe for except the Winters. I swallowed and looked down at my sister. Do you know where they keep it? It's no use, she said. You'll never win against them, Harper. You know why? Because you aren't willing to use dark magic against them. Dark magic is the most powerful thing on earth. Priestess Winter will win every time. The spells, dark magic. You said these spells are permanent. I asked, that you took over your sister's life forever and no one even remembers it. I didn't know that was possible. I thought all magic lost power over time. There is so much you still have to learn about the Order and about the way magic works. She crawled to the front of her cage and leaned her head against the bars. All magic has a cost, Harper. The greater the magic, the greater the cost. And dark magic, it costs the most of all. Don't let Priestess Winter fool you. She pretends to be a champion of rules and honor, but she's the evilest of us all. She looked me straight in the eye, and the sadness and despair I saw reflected there rocked me to the core. If there had ever been good in her, it was gone now. You were right about one thing, though. What's that? I asked. I do deserve this, she said. And Harper? Yes. Her face softened and tears filled her eyes. If you see my sweet Drake, will you tell him I love him? And with that, Lydia Ashworth turned away, hiding her human face from me forever. Chapter 51. Anyone could be anyone. I brought a shaky hand to my forehead. The Order had ruined so many lives. I knew Priestess Winter was evil, but the true extent of her power and influence hadn't really hit me until now. If she was capable of wiping out the memory of a person's entire existence, what else was she capable of? People who had grown up with Lydia Ashworth had completely missed the fact that she was too young to have ever given birth to Laurie and Drake. Her own husband didn't even remember that he had once loved another woman. Who else in Peachville had made a similar sacrifice? How could I be sure anyone was really who they said they were? Anyone could be anyone. My chest tightened and my breath hitched. The room spun around me, and I leaned back against the cold iron bars, desperate to get my bearings. Was she right? Had I gotten too deep into something I didn't even know the first thing about? Every time I pulled a thread in the tapestry that was the truth about the order, it led to something completely unexpected. Just when I thought I had a hold on the truth, another thread came loose and everything changed again. How do you fight an enemy you don't even understand? I sat there, paralyzed, staring at the shivering body of my sister. Panic seeped into my bones. Jackson and I had just declared war against something much more dangerous than I realized. This went so much further than just the slavery of demons. The deceit and lies involved went deeper than I could have ever imagined. I rubbed my face and forced myself back to the moment. I had to get control of myself. This was just another example of the great evil Priestess Winter was capable of. I'd already seen the horror of her actions that day Leah showed me what happened in Aldine. Was this really so much worse? I had to get it together and get the hell out of here. Still, my hands shook and my breath caught in my throat. How was I going to find the potion we needed to wake her up? I prayed Jackson would be able to find a recipe in the library upstairs. I grasped her hand tight and took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. I connected to my demon power, my heart racing. I visualized the path I'd taken to get here. I would have to retrace my steps with lightning speed in order to get back to the Hall of Doorways before anyone could stop us. I closed my eyes and let the fiery essence of my demon half burn within my soul. I shifted, taking Angela with me as I flew away from the cage and back through the hallway. Adrenaline shot through me. For a few brief moments, I believed I could really do it. I could get her out of there without anyone seeing us. But before I reached the end of the long basement hallway, I smacked against an invisible barrier. The blow forced me back into my human form as I fell to the ground. I heard a crack as Angela's head hit the cement behind me. I rushed over to her, my entire body aching and sore. Warm blood gushed from my nose. Angela groaned and rolled to her side, still dreaming despite the pain. I was only footsteps away from the staircase that led back up to the main house, but some kind of barrier had come up since I'd first come through here. This was the trap I'd been waiting for. When I lifted my eyes to the top of the stairs, my heart stopped cold. Blue silk slippers descended the stairway, followed by a beautiful girl in jeans and a white ruffled shirt. American as apple pie, with her pale skin, white blonde hair, and rosy cheeks. She smiled at me with her lips, but her eyes were cold and filled with contempt. Anora. I'd only met her briefly a couple of times, but I recognized her instantly. She was Zara's middle sister, a second. Had she been watching me this whole time? Fear twisted in my gut, and I knew she'd been waiting for me. Chapter 52, The Butterfly. I suppose it's pointless to ask you to let me go, I said. Anora cocked her head to the side, her blue eyes wide. This can't mean much of a surprise to a smart young woman like you, she said, her voice sugary as cotton candy. You had every chance to be a good prima, but it's your own choices that have brought you here. This isn't what anyone wanted for you. Of course not, I said. I searched my sister's head for the source of a new bleed, finally feeling a gash just beneath her left ear from where she hit the floor. I needed to stall Anora, distract her so I could stop the bleeding. You all wanted me to bow down and be the Order's puppet. If you knew me at all, you would have known I could never be that person. She lifted an eyebrow. I don't know. You seemed to really enjoy compromising yourself in order to make the cheerleading team, she said. After all, you knew Agnes wanted it more than anything. You didn't even hesitate, though. You squashed her dreams without a second thought. My mouth fell open. You do realize Agnes was a murderer, right? I said. That spot on the cheer team would have never been open if she hadn't killed Tori and tried to frame me for the murder. Am, am I really supposed to feel guilty about foiling her evil plan? Anora's smile lost some of its glow. You didn't know that at the time. As far as you knew, she was one of your only friends, an innocent orphan girl who just wanted to be a cheerleader. I applied pressure to Angela's wound, doing my best to stay focused on what was really important. I wasn't about to apologize for betraying Agnes. What she did to me was way worse. Besides, we all knew the Order wasn't ever going to let Agnes onto the team anyway, even if I hadn't decided to try out. Anora straightened her pearl bracelet and tugged at her sweater. We all thought you had potential. You could have been such a great prima, a real leader in Peachville. Imagine the power that could have been yours at such a young age, she said. Her eyes glittered at the mention of power. It turned my stomach. It's not too late, you know. It can still be yours if you want it. I made a choking sound. At what cost? My soul? My friends? My memories? Bitterness swelled within me. Do you really think power is worth all that to me? Anora's mouth fell open. Yes, she said. Everyone wants to be powerful. I just wanted to feel like I belonged to something, I said. I looked down at my sister, her face twisted in some secret horror that made my heart ache. I just wanted to have a family. Not that someone like you could ever understand that. You have to actually have a heart to care about other people. I swallowed back tears. I knew this conversation had gone on long enough. Anora had not come here to talk. She'd come to destroy me, and I intended to be ready for her. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I knew this battle would be my first true test. I connected first to the earth beneath my feet, beneath the floor. Deep within the ground, a powerful energy flowed. I sucked it into myself, fueling my body for the fight to come. You shouldn't be so quick to throw it all away for people like her. She looked down at my sister, disgust written across her face. Trust me, having sisters isn't all it's cracked up to be. I studied her and wondered what she must have meant by that. Did she know Sarra had betrayed them? I thought of the butterfly in my hair, but didn't dare bring attention to it. I'd like to judge that for myself, I said, praying Angela and I would make it out of here safely. Anora shook her head. She's never going to wake up, she said. I've made sure of that. Anger ran through me. I gripped Angela's hand. I wouldn't let her stay like this forever. Whatever they'd done to her, it was torture. I could see it in every grimace, hear it in every moan. I had to save her. You'll need a potion to wake her up, she said. She placed her index finger on her chin and paced in front of me. I'm sure, of course, Mother would be happy to give your sister one. That is, if you were willing to make a trade. I clenched my jaw tight. What kind of trade? An even trade, you for her. If you agree to become prima, all these nightmares go away, she said. She waved her hand and the air shimmered as the barrier between us disintegrated. She stepped closer and crouched down beside me. We could even take away your memories and replace them with happier ones. We could make you forget about Jackson. You wouldn't even miss him. Besides, Zara's upstairs right now with Celine, making sure he can't come down here to save you. My head snapped up. What? Sarra had betrayed us after all? This couldn't be happening. Think about it, Harper. You could still have your sister and your friends in the Order. You'd be rich, beautiful. You'd have so much power and influence. It would be a dream life, I promise you. You wouldn't remember any of this. Was she serious? Did she really think I'd give up so easily, even after all that I'd been through? The only alternative is death, she whispered. She placed a hand on my sister's arm, and Angela's body convulsed in pain. For everyone you've ever loved. Rage fueled my inner demon. I came alive with it, my hands tingling. Every inch of my skin buzzed with it. Becoming a prima would be worse than death, I said. Anora stood, a heavy sigh breaking from her lips. Don't be foolish, Harper, she said. This won't end well for you. I let go of Angela's hand and stood, my eyes locked on Anora's face. She had become my first target, and once I'd finished her, I would move on to anyone else who dared to stand in my way, even if I had to find Priestess Winter herself and force the potion recipe from her mind. I breathed in, feeding my power with two kinds of energy. I was both witch and demon. The earth hummed beneath my feet. Life force pulsed in the air around me, animating my demon side. I gathered it all in, ready to fight. My hands burst into flame, and I sent a wave of red fire toward Anora. She lifted a single finger, and my fire stopped, frozen in time as if she'd merely pressed pause. The flames hovered in the air between us for a brief moment. Then she put her lips together and blew, extinguishing the fire with a single breath. My heart stopped. Shock weakened my knees, and I struggled to breathe. She raised an eyebrow and waved her finger from side to side, clucking her tongue. You shouldn't have done that, she said. Before I had a chance to recover, she reared back, then pressed her flat palm toward me. A great, invisible force pushed through the hallway. It hit me like a bulldozer. My legs came out from under me, and I flew several feet backward, landing on my ass. The impact jarred me. I shook my head, trying to get my bearings. Down the hallway, Anora cursed. She had a strange expression on her face, as if she were confused. She tugged on her hair and frowned. I scrambled to my feet as Anora reared back and threw a ball of light toward me like a baseball. I lifted my arm in front of me, forming a shield at the last possible second. Anora's spell slammed into me. Her energy turned to black oil against my shield, and a foul taste coated my tongue. Her darkness seeped into the shield and into me. Coughs shook my body, forcing me to bend over. I clutched my chest and gasped for air, panic consuming me. I'd completely underestimated her. Was I strong enough to defeat her? I had to try, for both mine and Jackson's sake. From the corner of my eye, I saw a darkness swoop down on me from above like a bird. I screamed and crouched low to the ground as something brushed against my shoulder. A crow? I forced my eyes open, searching for familiar red eyes and knife-like talons. Instead, there was only shadow. My shirt ripped at my shoulder, but whatever she'd sent after me hadn't been able to touch my skin. Anora stomped her foot, an angry sound rumbling deep in her throat. I straightened and gathered a new spell between my fingertips. I threw a bolt of white-hot lightning toward her. She caught it as if it were a baseball, then threw it right back at me. I exhaled, letting go of my human form. My body transformed to smoke as the lightning flew through me. I somersaulted through the air, then reformed closer to where she stood. Surprise flashed in her eyes, but she recovered quickly. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a flock of shadow birds toward me, their pointed claws outstretched. I formed a circle of flames at my feet, then crouched and drew them up around me like a dome. The birds screeched as they burned. When the last shadow had died against my fire, I pulled the energy together into a single fireball, then hurled it toward Anora. She moved to dodge it, but the fire grazed her skin. She cried out, clutching her arm. When she pulled her hand away, the skin was blackened. She spun toward me, fury in her eyes. I took advantage of the moment and reached out to the earth deep beneath her feet. I planned to rip through the cement, pulling whatever vines and rocks and soil I could from under the house, but before I could do it, she spun her body around like a tornado. A large gust of air nearly knocked me down and broke my concentration. Jesus, I didn't know she could do that. I struggled against the wind, but managed to stay on my feet. She stopped spinning and stared at me, mouth open. Rage reddened her face. Her entire body shook with tension. She pulled both hands up and away from her, forming tight fists that began to glow with a bright blue light. Fear raced through me, and I tried to shift, but something about that light put me in a daze. I worked to close my eyes or look away, but I was helpless against it. Like a deer in headlights, I stared forward, unable to move. She lifted her hands and shot the light toward me. Terror ripped through me as the light approached. I could feel the heat of it on my skin, but I could do nothing to protect myself or turn away. I screamed, bracing myself for the pain, knowing from the fury in her eyes that this was it for me, the end of it all. The light made a direct hit, and although I felt the extreme power behind it, I felt no pain. Anora stumbled backward, eyes bulging. Her shoulders slumped, and she gasped for air. "What have you done?" she asked. How did you resist that? I put everything into that spell." She stuttered in fear and confusion. She leaned against the wall, her chest rising with each pained breath. Confused, I studied my skin, patted my body to make sure I wasn't missing something. I hadn't done anything. I had no idea why I wasn't dead or in excruciating pain. Then something began to burn the skin near my temple. I reached up, confused. My hand touched the bobby pin in my hair. Zara's gift, the crystal butterfly. Somehow, it had protected me from Anora's magic. It had been protecting me all along. That must have been why she seemed so angry and confused every time she tried to cast a spell at me. The force of her light spell must have been too much for it. The butterfly burned so hot against my skin I had to rip it from my hair and throw it to the ground. The blue stone at its center flashed bright, then faded and cracked. Anora stumbled forward, eyes narrowed. She fell to her knees near the broken pin. "Where did you get that?" I stared down at the butterfly in awe. I was wrong. Sarra hadn't betrayed us. She must have put some kind of protection spells into the stone. How had she known back then that I would someday need it? Tears of gratitude stung my eyes. Sarra had saved my life. Okay, so we are in the thick of what I would call the midpoint of the novel, and we split it there. So obviously the battle is not completely finished there. They are not out of the woods yet, but whew, Sarra did not betray them. Sarra was protecting Harper this whole time. Harper is very close to getting her sister out of there, but Angela is hurt yet again, and everybody is kind of exhausted at this point. Harper also, this is, when you think about the midpoint for a character, a lot of times is a moment where they face odds that are so great. There's like, how are we ever going to win this? Like, what are we possibly going to do? And this moment for her where she basically says, you know what, I will face every single one of them down. If I have to rip this potion from their memories, I will find a way to save my sister. So it's this kind of realization of like, okay, she says that, and then moments later actually fights Anora and realizes, holy crap, I didn't realize just how powerful they are. And so her eyes are being opened time and time again with the hunters, with the way her father fights, with, Jackson and everything else. And now with Anora of realizing, okay, maybe these people are a lot stronger than I thought they were, with the scorpion and everything else. And it's like she is in over her head and she is not prepared for this fight yet. But she knows that if she doesn't get herself prepared, if she doesn't do everything she can, they're all going to lose. But as easy as it would be to just say, okay, I will become your prima and let everybody else live, as tempting as that might be to some people, I mean, she would have an amazing life, right? She would have all this power, this beauty, riches. She would be in control of an entire town. it doesn't even tempt Harper, because she's like, I will not be your prima, because that is a fate worse than death, to be that kind of person and to do that to other people. And we're just not going to do that. So we're in this fight. So I feel like this is a good moment for her, where she's like doubling down and realizing, and she's not going to take the deal, obviously. But she's also realizing she doesn't really have the power to fight these people. And, you know, there's more to come in this middle section of the story. And then after that, you know, there's a lot, there's just, like I told you guys, after that one part, it's just kind of like every single episode is going to have some kind of twist or some kind of new information or some kind of big thing that happens all the way to the rest of the thing. So this is episode 12. There are 10 episodes remaining of this book. So I hope you guys are loving it. Don't forget that you can purchase Demons Forever in ebook or paperback format. All the links are down below to my website if you want to grab them. I did not bring any of the other copies of Demons Forever with me, so I can't do any giveaways for this particular book just yet, but I'm hoping to still do a few during the Spooktacular, which is coming up in the month of October. I've already started getting some plans ready. We won't actually start like the main part of Spooktacular until we get into the last couple of weeks of October, but I do have some fun things planned for you. So make sure that you're subscribed, and make sure you hit that like button down below, leave a comment or whatever you need to do to let us know if you're enjoying this previews or premieres and all of that. Remember, there is no coffee chat this Friday because I will be at the Ninc conference, and I will see you guys for episode 13 from a different Airbnb in more South Florida than we are now, near Fort Myers. And we will see you guys then from that new house, and I will keep you updated on that. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Have an awesome week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.